Good afternoon. Joining me today is Mike Nord, Deputy Director of Samaritans Isle of Man. Shortly, Mike will be taking us through how the pandemic has affected people and how his organisation has worked and adapted throughout. But first, today's stats. The total tests undertaken now stands at 5,867. We are awaiting 18 results, meaning the total tests concluded is 5,849. Total confirmed cases remains at 336, so there have been no new cases identified today. That means we currently stand at 30 days with no new cases. This week we reached a significant milestone and we officially achieved local elimination of the virus. We now have exceptionally low or zero transmission of the virus within our community. Now that we find ourselves in this position, the main weapon in our arsenal is our border control, or as the Chief Minister said yesterday, our Manx bubble. This weekend may have a very normal feel to it. There may be drinks and dining with friends. School bags and gym bags will be prepared for the week ahead. Office attire and uniforms will be ironed and laid out. Conversations will start to change from what you have been eating to what you have been doing and who you met up with. Perhaps the weekly family quiz will become the weekly family get-together and part of our new normal. As part of government's own gradual return to normal, the decision has been taken that from this week we will no longer be publishing statistics over the weekend. This will allow more workers to return to their normal work patterns. However, the figures will still be monitored, and if there is anything significant to report, we will report this as soon as we can, as we have done throughout the whole of this pandemic. These live briefings from next week will be moving to being twice a week on a Monday and Thursday. The regularity of these will continue to be reviewed. If we need to update vital information outside of these times, again, as always, we will. The antibody testing programme is showing some interesting findings. These will be published after the first 5,000 are completed, and this will be towards the end of the month. We are seeing a handful of people each day requiring a PCR test, or as it is sometimes called, a swab test. And as the stats show, these are returning negative results. The Chief Minister reminded us yesterday of the impact that the virus has had on our community. Some of the impact cannot be seen. It cannot easily be calculated in numbers. It is a feeling many, if not all of us, will have experienced in some form or another over the last weeks and months. It has been a mental battle. The island was locked down. People had little interaction with the outside world. There may be some of you that did not find it too difficult to adapt, but many will have felt anxious, overwhelmed, or isolated. These feelings will still be there. The new normal is just that, new. Many of you are returning to your place of work. Your children are returning to school, and without social distancing. Shopping trips and daily activities may make you feel anxious. It is important to remember, whatever it is you are feeling, that it is okay to feel anxious and nervous, and you should take things at your own pace. Do what you feel comfortable with. If you don't feel ready to go out or to see friends or family, that's okay. You need to decide what is right for you. Some will have suffered a bereavement during the lockdown or struggled financially. You may have concerns about personal space now that social distancing requirements have been removed. And again, this is a normal response. We are all getting used to things. The work of organisations such as the Samaritans Isle of Man have been there to help many people through trying times. They also have had to adapt to the pandemic. the mental well-being of our community is, and always has been, hugely important, and was one of the determining factors on when decisions were made to ease restrictions such as gatherings and recreational activities. That is why I am very pleased to have Mike here today take us through some of the experiences his organisation has had over the course of the pandemic, and to give us an insight into the range of issues that have been affecting people. And I would now like to hand over to Mike.
Thank you, Minister. Good afternoon, everybody. As everyone said, my name is Mike Nudd, and I'm the Deputy responsible for training at the Isle of Man Samaritans. I've been a Samaritan for approximately 10 years, and the Samaritans in the Isle of Man have been servicing the community for over 40 years. We celebrated our 40th anniversary just last year. Samaritans was designated as an essential service by the Isle of Man government, which means that people who are in distress and despair can make contact with Samaritans, and we can provide emotional support to them. Indeed, every 6 seconds somebody contacts Samaritans for help. And it's worth reminding everybody what the vision is of Samaritans is that fewer people die by suicide. But I would mention that callers do not have to be suicidal to call Samaritans. They tend to be in distress and despair. Samaritan volunteers are very busy. We work 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And this has not changed during the pandemic. We are as busy as ever. We are currently providing emotional support over 7,000 times a day, whether it's by telephone, email or correspondence. 1 in 3 calls to Samaritans are about the coronavirus, with people feeling anxious and distressed. The virus seems to be more frequently discussed in phone calls rather than emails, and callers are showing different needs between email and the telephone. Phone calls appear to centre on a need for human contact, which people are lacking at this time, whereas callers using email tend to be seeking more in-depth emotional support. The most common caller concerns explicitly relate to coronavirus are loneliness and or isolation, but there's also mental health challenges, illness, family concerns, finance and unemployment. The coronavirus and lockdown exacerbated callers' existing conditions, mainly anxieties, but also depression, OCD and others too. All calls to Samaritans are confidential. Because Samaritans operate with a centralised switchboard, it means that callers are transferred to the next available volunteer regardless of where they are based. This means that Isle of Man volunteers don't necessarily deal with Isle of Man callers. We deal with callers from all over the UK. We do answer calls from those who need support in the Isle of Man, but also from the UK. The thing is, we don't know where they are, unless they tell us. Our dedicated volunteers are going above and beyond to be available for those in need during these unprecedented times, and continue to operate our phone service from our branch. Unfortunately, some volunteers had to take a step back due to self-isolation, but others stepped up to the plate and took on extra shifts. We managed to maintain the shifts and the shift rota to the best of our ability throughout the pandemic. But at all times, volunteer safety was a priority. All branches applied strict guidelines about hygiene standards and social distancing to ensure that volunteers are kept safe and operating in accordance with government guidelines.
Thank you very much, Mike. And can I take the opportunity to thank you and all your volunteers for all that you do in Samaritans Isle of Man. Just before the pandemic started, I got an opportunity to go up and see the refurbished centre that you're working from. Yeah. And the work is very, very much appreciated.
Thank you, Minister.
So
I'll take that back to
personally from me, thank you to everyone involved.
Yeah.
As the Chief Minister mentioned yesterday at the press conference, there are also a number of good resources on our COVID website. We know there will be an increased demand for support as we exit the pandemic, and we are gearing up for this. And I would now like to open up to questions. And first up today, I have Tim from Manx Radio. Tim.
First of all, Minister, and Mike as well, I'm going to be fair and a question to each of you, if I may. Minister, first, the Chief Minister is very keen to tell us we're free to hug our loved ones again. When can people do this properly, free of making an appointment, free of filling in a form like this, free from PPE in residential and care homes? Because they're obviously missing out on those hugs of relatives at the moment.
They most certainly are, Tim, and as a department we are acutely aware of that within DHSC. So all the policies around care homes, around visitation, they're all due to be reviewed at the end of next week again. Obviously, as we stated at this press conference last week, for the time being we wanted to keep measures in place because we needed to get past that 28-day point, which classes as local elimination, and then see where we stood from there. So there will be new decisions being taken at the end of next week. I know it's exceptionally frustrating, both for the residents in these homes and also the wider family, who, as you rightly say, just want to go and hug a loved one. But I do ask that they just bear with us that little bit longer while we look at the policies, we review it, because what we are doing is for the safety of those residents, the people who ultimately are in our care. But, the families have been exceptionally patient. I've spoken to many families personally myself. So just a little bit longer is all I ask, but I can promise people it is currently under review.
Thank you. And Mike, thank you for joining us today. In many ways, as you've alluded to, there's a perfect storm for mental health with the pandemic, recession, isolation, maybe even a loss of a loved one or employment. And that cuts across all age groups. But have you seen an increase in calls from youngsters during the past 3 months, more so than usual, maybe?
Not necessarily, Tim. I think the calls have been spread across all demographics. Loneliness and isolation has been a key subject, and in that case it's primarily the more mature profile that would be calling us. We do find the younger demographics tend to contact us by email, and then the rationale for contacting us is not just down to the lockdown, it's down to a broader challenge that they've got in their life at this time.
And if I can just add, Tim, as well, from a DHSC point of view, that's what we've been seeing with our various services as well. It's a spread across age ranges. It's not one particular age range. The challenges and issues might differ according to age range, but certainly a lot of what we're seeing is across all age ranges. It's not limited to one.
Thank you.
OK, next up I've got Chris from Energy FM. Good afternoon, Chris.
Good afternoon, Minister. The UK's coronavirus alert level has today been downgraded from 4 to 3. For those listening at home who may not know, that means the virus is considered to be in general circulation and there could be a gradual relaxation of restrictions. Does that have any knock-on effects for us here in the Isle of Man?
Not at the current time, Chris. We have been reviewing our border position, which is obviously what allowed us to create, as the Chief Minister referred to yesterday, the Manx bubble. We still believe at the moment those restrictions need to remain in place as they are because of the spread that we are still seeing in the UK and our near neighbour. The Chief Minister alluded to yesterday that we may speak to other countries and other jurisdictions that have got low or zero COVID transmission about pairing up with them. But at the moment, we're not ready to take a step on borders, and that is, to be frank, what has kept the island safe and put it in the position it's in today. So no, there's going to be no immediate changes on borders due to the UK's announcement today.
OK, thank you. And there's been much talk of a so-called new normal over recent weeks. One of the things that we've become accustomed to is hearing X amount of tests have been carried out. How long do you envisage testing will continue now that we've got a handle on this virus?
Well, testing will need to continue as long as people are presenting with symptoms. We've got to have at least some form of testing available. The way we use testing may change. The way we actually test might change as well as different things come onto the market. But certainly testing will be around for a long time to come. We know with this virus that even during the asymptomatic stages, people can be very highly contagious. So it is important we have some level of testing regime there. It won't hit a point where basically we'll suddenly say that's it, we're turning off all COVID testing. There will have to be some level of testing available as long as COVID-19's around.
Thank you.
OK, and next I've got Josh from ITV.
Thank you, Minister. I want to address the border again, if I may. Can you give us some insight into what this border force that is coming may look like? And will any form of testing be included? Because surely a temperature check is better than no check if there's some potential it will detect the virus.
Well, in terms of a temperature check, Josh, I think I've expressed this before, it will only pick up people who obviously have the temperature. A temperature normally only presents when the person is symptomatic. So you wouldn't have it during the asymptomatic stage because it obviously is a symptom of the virus. So it doesn't really add anything. People can also suppress their temperatures, as the Chief Minister alluded to yesterday. If you look around the world where temperature checks have been in, certainly from what I've looked at, it hasn't made that much of a difference. But in terms of the border force, I'm not going to give you any spoilers in advance of any announcements. I'm not going to preempt any announcements from my colleagues. But what I would say is that obviously as we release the borders, there's various options that might have to be looked at, particularly around testing and everything else. There's going to be the roadmap, which hopefully will be published next week. So people will be then able to see in detail. But I'm not going to give any spoilers in advance ahead of that being a publication.
Okay, then just as a supplementary to that, can you clarify what test was given to the Abbotsford residents before they moved out of their nursing home?
So that was a PCR test. So in terms, well, when you say moved out of their nursing home, are you referring to when they moved out into Nobles, or are you referring to when they were in Nobles, then moving out to a new home?
Either, if they were different.
Yeah, well, no, it's still the same test, PCR, but what happens is it was a double test. So basically they were tested to say they were COVID-free. They were then tested again before they went into the new home. No test is 100%, as we know, but that was the best way of doing it. And that's what we have anyway in place if people transfer between nursing homes anyway, that we do the double testing.
Okay, and is that a sort of similar test idea we're going to see within the borders at all? Is there what I mean really, is there any confirmation that there will be some kind of testing at the borders, even if it's minimal?
Well, like I say, that would have to be worked up at the time when we're looking to release borders, and it depends what we're looking to do. At the moment, as I said in answer to Chris, we're not at that stage yet, but you will see the roadmap hopefully next week, and hopefully that should be able to give people an idea of what happens at each different stage. The problem with PCR testing, of course, is it takes time to process. It's a lab process test, so that means that you won't get the results till the next day. So it's not an instantaneous test that tells you you've got COVID-19.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then last up, I've got Simon from Business 365.
Good afternoon, Minister. My first question really is aimed at both of you gentlemen. We've been led to believe that the number of attempted suicides among young men on the island has risen dramatically during the lockdown period. Is this something you're able to confirm?
Well, before I bring Mike in, just to say certainly we've not seen any evidence of that. We've from DHSC, we certainly have not seen any evidence from that. Mike?
Yeah, I would agree with the Minister. There's no evidence of increase in suicide in the Isle of Man and indeed across the UK as a consequence of coronavirus.
Okay, thank you. My second question, Mike, is aimed for you. Samaritans, obviously, as we've heard, is a vital support service, no more so than a time like this. Have there been points at which you felt the service was close to being overwhelmed?
I think in the Isle of Man, I think we've coped with it pretty well. We've had local volunteers who, as I say, have stepped up to the plate when necessary, so we've kept the shifts going. I am aware that in the UK, it's been perhaps a bigger challenge. There's been some branches have actually had to temporarily close due to lack of funding, for example. So the pressures on the organisation have been quite challenging throughout the pandemic. I think it's a voluntary organisation. We rely on volunteers, and in situations like this, volunteers step up, and that's what I've seen in the Isle of Man.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got an additional question. Tim first, then Chris, and then Josh. Tim?
Yes, can I just ask Mike, what should somebody look out for as warning signs that maybe things aren't right? Because quite often I've read people really aren't aware that things are starting to come off the rails. So what are the classic things people should look out for and think, do I need to get some help maybe?
I think it's quite a broad subject to answer, is that, Tim? And you've got mental health experts who would probably advise better than we can. All I can comment on is the type of call that we receive at Samaritans. The emotional well-being of an individual it plummets, it deteriorates significantly. They become very isolated themselves, they become very quiet. The whole day becomes a challenge. Just thinking of getting up in the morning becomes a challenge. And at those situations, that's when, and if that's out of the norm for them as individuals, that's a sign that there's an issue there. And people need to look after themselves as best they can. One of the thoughts is that this is a short-term thing. It's not going to happen forever, hopefully, so they can look forward and try and think about how they can recover from it. Do what's good for them, do what they enjoy doing, eat healthily, take exercise. But one thing which we always encourage, and which is why Samaritans is there, is talk to somebody. Talk to somebody you trust. Now, when you talk to somebody you trust and you talk to a family member, sometimes the family member just wants to fix it. The difference with Samaritans is that we just provide emotional support. We don't give advice. We don't tell them what to do. We explore what their challenges are, and then we try and explore options for them. And we try and encourage the caller to come up with their own solutions. But we're there as a listening ear just to support them.
And I think it also goes back, Tim, to one of the early press conferences I did with Ross from Mental Health, where Ross mentioned that, if there's someone close to you or a friend, that they don't seem as they would normally, that there seems to be something there. Our natural human reaction sometimes is to step back and not actually approach the person and ask about it. And as Ross said, that can actually be one of the best things you can do, is actually speak to the person. They may not want to talk about it, but, making clear to the person you are there to help them and to support them if they need it. And that sometimes can make the difference.
And if I may just follow up, if the friend talking to somebody they're concerned about, should they mention suicide?
Well, I mean, in terms of the mental health,
This conversation.
This was obviously something. I think this actually came up as a question to Ross at one of the press briefings, and what he said is that there's no point skirting around the topic from what I've said, but it's about having a proper heart-to-heart with someone and not being afraid to do that if you feel that person is struggling, because, like I say, sometimes the natural reaction is to step back and think, oh, they won't want me involved in their business. I don't want to sound like like I'm mollycoddling or I'm pestering them. What Ross was saying is it's good to talk, and it's good to try and connect with someone to see if you can help.
If I may, Minister.
Yes, of course, Mike.
I think on that point, Tim, with regards to suicide, there are ways of exploring the level of depth and despair that an individual is in without saying, "Are you feeling suicidal?" There are ways around it. There are sensitive and delicate ways of asking that question, but you don't even the individual doesn't even know you've asked the question. But there are nice, gentle ways of just finding out just at what depth they are. And in those situations, encourage them to call Samaritans, because we'll then listen to them.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris.
Question for Mike as well, if I may. Many people were delighted to be able to go out and socialise for the first time in 3 months yesterday, and I'm sure they'll be continuing this weekend as well. Old friends, good friends, even just mutual acquaintances, all smiling, catching up with one another after lockdown. Has Samaritans gleaned from some calls over the last few months that the closure of nearly everything may have allowed some people to realise the things that are most important to them?
Yeah, I think so, Chris. I think people and individuals look at life in a different way as a consequence of the lockdown, and they are managing their own life different. Now, there are some individuals who are finding that particularly challenging because the new norm is not for them, but some individuals are finding the new norm fairly comfortable, and so they're dealing with it appropriately.
Thank you.
Okay, Josh.
Yeah, another one to yourself, Health Minister, if I may. Given the Isle of Man's record in dealing with the coronavirus and the largely positive reaction and interest it's received from the UK, is there any sort of message you would give to people in the UK, particularly in the northwest, where the virus has hit hardest?
Well, I don't think it's wise for government ministers in one jurisdiction to be making suggestions to other governments and other ministers, no matter how helpful they may seem. I think what my focus has obviously been on the Isle of Man. Other jurisdictions have to make their own choice, and I don't think it's very wise for politicians in different jurisdictions to be giving other people in other jurisdictions advice. What I would say is what has worked for us. We know on the island what has worked is our track and trace that is in place. We've done that physically with people. But one of the big things that we have seen is that, the people of the Isle of Man have responded well. They followed the rules. They did what we were asking of them in exceptionally difficult circumstances, because we were asking people to pause their lives. So I suppose if I had any message, it's not just for the people of the Northwest, it's for people all over the world, which is the rules that are in place in your community, no matter how frustrating they may be, they are there for a very good reason. They're not rules that have been put in place because anyone wanted the rules or anyone wanted the powers to be able to do this, but they are there for your own health and the safety of your wider community. And I think that's the best message I can give to everyone, not just people in the Northwest.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you once again to our media partners for joining us today. More changes are coming next week. Speed limits are returning to normal on Monday. Please be aware of those around you and please continue to drive responsibly. We are in a great position. We have used Manx solutions for Manx situations. Let's continue doing this. Now that our economy is reopening and trying to take steps towards normality, let's get out there and support our local businesses by shopping locally. And remember, we must respect each other and be mindful of our collective well-being. As a community, we have achieved so much of which we can be rightly proud. Despite all the trials and tribulations and uncertainty that has come with COVID-19, I am firmly of the view that we have emerged stronger as a community. It is our community spirit that has carried us through this journey, and it will be a community spirit that I believe will continue long after COVID-19 is gone. If we continue to support and care for one another, there is nothing that we cannot achieve. Thank you very much.